I haven't taken the time to take as many notes these days, so I'm not too sure what's gonna happen when I'm up to date on my notes. Okay. Use the trickle effect or restrictions to obtain more change. And the simple idea is basically if you set your rule or restriction or change to something that if you were to make this change, you will also end up making a lot of other changes, you can use your own psychology to your own benefit and make more of the changes that you want. So, a simple example, which is me making these videos. It is an act of maybe 15 to 30 minutes a day of actually recording the videos. However, the choice of making these videos has the external effect of me thinking to myself about my speech, about my mistakes in my speech in the previous video, because as soon as I upload or like finish recording, I'll go back and think about all the mistakes I made. And so it automatically makes me think more about what I'm going to say. It makes me try to make sure I make more notes. It makes me try to plan out things I say. And in itself, that means that I'm thinking through to myself about these kind of topics more, and so on. Other example is if you say, let's say, I'm not gonna tell I'm just gonna use alcohol as an example again, because it's such an easy addiction, or like not addiction, but like it's such an easy example because everybody would understand it easily, even if you don't drink. Let's say I wanted to quit drinking, but I don't want to say I'm gonna quit drinking, because that's a really high bridge to gap. So instead of saying I'm gonna quit drinking, what if I said, so to put a restriction on my drinking. So the example for the trainer was, let's say he doesn't say that he cannot eat chips, but if he were to eat chips, he would have to go to the grocery store and buy one bag of chips, like one serving bag of chips, and then that way, if he ever feels like eating chips, and it's like, and he's not willing to go that far to get chips, then he just doesn't have chips. So it's like he only has chips when he's willing to go that far for the chips. That way, it automatically restricts most of the times he had chips. So to put himself, to not restrict his ability to have it, but to say, when I have it, I have to do this. So it's like that, putting distance. I guess another example would be to say, I'm going to keep my phone away from my computer and away from my bed. That way, if I want to look at my phone, I can't do it while I'm on my bed, and I can't do it while I'm on my computer. A simple example. So it's like, if you set these kind of restrictions, then you will automatically have changes that you want as well. So my alcohol example here in my notes is, if in order for me to drink, I must first meditate for 20 minutes before I'm allowed to drink. Like right before. So if you're not willing to do the 20-minute meditation, for example, then you that time you can't drink. It's just an example. And for me, I say I don't eat unless I do my workout, which is, I have a set amount of workouts. I can either do it all before breakfast, or do half of it, or like at least half of it before breakfast, and however much is left before dinner, which is my second meal. So it's like, if I want to eat breakfast, I have to first finish the first half. And if I want to eat my second meal, I have to have finished all of my exercises on the list. other examples, I guess the other examples is the one with the trainer's examples of how he got people to change their diet. Instead of looking at what they eat and going, cut this out, eat this, eat that, he would say things like, drink 2 liters of water a day, or drink or eat X amount of protein before anything else, or things like, there was something, or like, don't eat while distracted, don't eat processed foods, or like as much as possible. So because like processed foods are so condensed in calories, and these kinds of restrictions, even though they're not telling you can't eat this food, you can't eat that food, these kind of guidelines make it so that you'll naturally consume less calories. Anyways, and when you set these kind of rules for yourself, they're much easier psychologically. I'm not going to say to follow. It's almost like they're easier to swallow. It's like, if someone tells you to do this, you're much more resistant. But if someone tells you, in order to do this, you must first do this, it feels a lot more acceptable. Okay. Partners, right. So frame it as if you have a partner. As if you're designing it for someone else. You're designing the rules for someone else. So you design it as if it's someone else who's listening. So if you say it in a certain way, the other person's probably just not going to do it. If you say it in a certain way. So you basically have to account for, do you think they would actually follow through? Or like frame it in a way that makes it so more likely for them to follow through. And also do it in a way that will actually get results. So it's like you have to balance these two, as if you're doing it for someone else, and also to treat yourself that way too. And obviously the balance of these two variables can also depend on your level of discipline, I suppose. And so you can also adjust this balance over time. Your goals and results must be measured using a metric that is relative to yourself and not others. Basically a single player game. You have to treat your progress in a way that can be measured in the framework of a single player experience and not a multiplayer experience. And the simple reason for this is because it needs to be, progress must be absolute and not relative. That's the simple statement of it. Now, is the relative progress, is the rate of progress relative and important? Yes. Like if you say I've made X amount of progress, but it took me way longer than everybody else did, that can be a problem. That is most likely a problem. And either you're not trying hard enough, or you're studying the wrong things, or things that aren't for you. It's gonna be one of these two things. Like there's almost no case where it's neither of these things. And the reason is because everybody has something that they can learn well. Maybe, I mean, if you have like 2 IQ, maybe not, but almost nobody has 2 IQ, okay? And even if you do, most people can do things based on muscle memory, but let's just talk practically. For the majority of people, you can make reasonable progress in reasonable time, as long as you're not doing something that you completely hate or are completely unsuited for. Anyways. And the example is obviously if it takes you 3 years to get through grade 4, you're going too slow. Yes, sure. It's supposed to take 1 year. Whatever. But if you say, I want to be number 1 at something, and you don't get number 1, and you go, okay, I guess it's not good enough, that's just not going to be practical. Anyways. So, like, I'll use exercises as an example because that's the easiest. If you want to do X amount of exercise and that X depends on how much the other people you look at are, that variable is just going to change based on who you look at and not based on what is actually good for you, or what is necessary for you, because if you compare yourself against like these hyperactive people or like these bodybuilders, it's not going to be practical. Like, very few people actually want to be particularly muscular. And obviously I'm exaggerating when I say bodybuilders, but like the gym bros that are really super like strong, right? You only need a certain amount of metric in all fields physically, like your strength, your mobility, your cardio, etc. When you reach a certain level, anything more isn't actually going. Any more is just about maintaining that level. Unless you have particular goals in the field of muscle. But anyways. So basically the point is, if you are using your metric and comparing yourself to the people you look at, the problem is that your metric is going to vary entirely dependent on which group of people you look at. And then whereas if you just compare it against yourself, then you can set objective metrics that are actually going to be, that are not dependent on your surroundings. Okay, they should be somewhat dependent on your surroundings though, but like not really. I don't know how, because like now that I say this out loud, I'm like, you do need some level of relativeness to your surroundings, but like not relative to what you see on social media, or like whatever corner of the social media you happen to look at more often, or whatever leaderboard you look at, and so on. The ones that are physically in your physical proximity do matter though, and you do need some form of relevance to them. But that's a completely different story. Define happiness. Goals must have a tangible metric from which you can derive actionable steps, which is why if you want to pursue happiness, you need to define them, as well as the aspects that lead to them. For me, I think it just means life satisfaction, and I don't mean which is like the satisfaction with what life is, and I don't necessarily mean exactly your life, but like in general, what reality is, what life is. Like, you are okay with the way life works, and then you take the actionable steps to live your life the way you want within the rules of life. But if you just hate the rules of life, then you'll never be satisfied. Something like that. I don't know. Okay. One example is, I want confidence that is derived from knowing that my actions match what I believe they should be. And there's two aspects of this: changing my actions and changing what I believe my actions should be. And it's going to be a combination of these two things. I'm not saying it should be only one or only the other, but both of these need to change. both of them take time. But that's currently what I'm working on. I am lenient with myself on wasting some amount of time as long as I've checked off everything that I feel I need to do, which also happens to be the case that I'm adding things to the checklist over time. Which also means I'm slowly wasting less time.